whereas Cimabue brought into art this new, very powerful sense of the body that feels, the body that suffers, I think what Giotto gave to art was a whole new level of emotion. He didn't just paint the body, he painted the soul, he painted the heart. Every face here is full of a particular feeling. It's obvious, perhaps most obvious, in the great scenes of Christ's Passion with which the story reaches its emotional climax, that amazing lamentation where the angels fill the sky like extraordinary images of very human agony. It's really powerful. But I think if you want to appreciate Giotto in his originality, it's almost better to turn to some of the quieter scenes where he's invested the figures with a very subtle level of emotion that simply hadn't been present in art before in Italy. For example, this beautiful nativity where the Virgin looks at the Christ child. She's giving him over to the serving woman to have his first bath. And she looks at this swaddled child with a tremendous, long, slow gaze of sadness mixed with love, mixed with kind of foreboding. It's as if in this act of giving him away to be bathed, she's seeing in her mind's eye the moment when she'll have to give him over to be sacrificed, to be crucified. Another thing that Giotto does brilliantly, I think, is create parallels, because it's a kind of simultaneous cinema where you can see every frame of the story at the same time. You can see these visual parallels. So there's a scene right up in the top right-hand corner, a beautiful scene where Joachim and Anna, the Virgin's parents, embrace by the gate of the city, and they give each other this beautiful, tender kiss. The integrity of their relationship, so to speak, is established by the fact that Giotto's placed them under an arch, the most architecturally solid of forms. And that kiss is brilliantly contrasted. If you come down on the diagonal, you find Judas embracing Christ. And Giotto has placed both of their heads in profile, just like the heads of Joachim and Anna. This is, so to speak, the evil version of the kiss. And instead of the arch that encloses those two blessed figures, Christ and Judas, at this moment of betrayal, are surrounded by soldiers, and the weapons form this kind of chaos in the sky. At the level of formal invention, Giotto's never been surpassed. This is about as good as it gets. Giotto wasn't just one of the greatest artists ever to have lived, he was also a bit of a player, a tireless networker, and a canny businessman. By the end of his life, this one-time shepherd boy, if we're to believe Vasari, had extensive interests in the textile business in Florence and a large personal fortune. He counted the King of Naples and the Pope among his friends, and he got Dante, no less, to do his PR for him. Once Cimabue thought to hold the field in painting, wrote Dante. Now Giotto is all the rage, dimming the lustre of others' fame. Italian art had reached a pinnacle as one genius emerged after another. But all that was dramatically halted when Italy was plunged into darkness. In 1348, as if in the footsteps of the craftsman from Byzantium, the plague spread like wildfire across Europe from the east, via Sicily, and into every city across Italy. Its impact was dramatic and unexpected, its symptoms gruesome. Boccaccio described its effects in the Decameron. In men and women alike, it first betrayed itself by the emergence of certain tumours in the groin or armpit, some of which grew to the size of a common apple, others to the size of an egg. These the common people called gavoccioli. After that, things only got worse. Black boils appeared all over the body, and within 2 or at the most 3 days, death ensued. The effects are almost impossible to imagine. And when it came to the old rivalries, the plague did not take sides. In Siena, they had to stop work on the great cathedral for which Duccio had painted his Maestà, because all the builders were dead. In Florence, half the population was killed, 1 in every 2 people. No wonder, to those who remained, it seemed as if the end of the world was upon them. plague fanned the flames of superstition, and popular devotion to the Madonna flared up into a kind of mass hysteria. I'm on my way, almost the last stop on my journey, to a building in Florence which encapsulates this troubled time. It's called Orsan Michele, and it was once the city's grain market, a stone's throw from the cathedral. But in time of plague, it also became the most popular site of pilgrimage in Tuscany. People came here in vast numbers to light candles and pray for salvation. In 1359 alone, a staggering 1 million candles were sold. And people were drawn here by the latest painting of the Virgin, because the rumour was this picture could work miracles. In those days, Orsan Michele had an open arcade, so pilgrims could have seen the shrine to the Virgin shimmering within. The picture they saw, framed in an ornate tabernacle, is a surprisingly modest piece of work. Now, the Florentines could have commissioned for this great shrine site in the centre of their city a grand altarpiece such as Duccio had given to Siena nearly 50 years before. But I think that's exactly what they didn't want. In this time of plague and pestilence, they consciously turned their back on that kind of sophistication and grandeur and opted for something much simpler, an image that seems to return to the devotional simplicity of the art before Duccio and Giotto. It's by Bernardo Daddi, and it's a Madonna of tenderness. Christ reaches out to touch his mother's cheek. And in that gesture, I think we can sense the gestures of all the Florentines, all the pilgrims who came to this site in time of plague to pray before the image. Almost more to the point than the image itself is the great tabernacle that's been constructed like a huge reliquary box to contain it. And I think what this grand tabernacle demonstrates very vividly is that picture, that piece of beautifully painted wood, was not regarded as a work of art, but as a holy object, a kind of window through which divinity might miraculously spread. It was something that could change your life. Now, I've been coming here for more than 20 years, and every time I've walked through that door from the street, I've been disappointed because there's been scaffolding up. It's been in restauro for decades, but now, finally, it has been restored. It's the first time I've seen it, and I can't think of any other place in Italy where you can come quite as close, so close that you can touch it, to this world of plague, of fear, of pestilence, of deep, deep veneration and superstition. It's almost like a kind of time machine that transports you back to a world that's vanished forever. It might seem incredible, but within 50 years the artists of Florence had decided that this type of work was primitive. They'd taken art to a new level, or so they thought, with a radical new technique of painting, mathematically calculated perspective, which enabled them to plan out pictures that could be as convincing as photographs, as accurate as computer graphics. For them, this was a revolution, a total break with the past, spelling the end of early Christian art, the end of its influence and appeal. But that's not a view of art history with which I agree. There's no doubt that the discovery of mathematically calculated perspective suddenly gave artists a whole new box of tricks. It enabled them to create a whole new set of sense-beguiling optical illusions. But it would be a mistake to see it as a great quantum leap forward, the equivalent in art of, say, Einstein's theory of relativity, because it wasn't like that. Artists realised, almost as soon as perspective was invented, that while it liberated them in some ways, in others, it placed limits on the creative imagination. For proof of this, you only have to look at the very greatest artists working in the aftermath of the discovery of perspective.
They all find ways to escape the literalism of precisely delineated space, to recover the freedom that earlier Christian artists had taken for granted. Look at how El Greco creates a space of shifting uncertainty, filled with elongated figures that seem to flicker like flames, looking directly back to the paradise fields of Byzantine art. Look at how Caravaggio uses pools of shadow to lose inessential detail, to focus the eye on the essence of a scene, here, the suffering body of Christ. It's achieved by other means, but this is the same focus on the essence of a feeling that permeates the art of the masters of 13th and 14th century Italy.
One of the reasons for Christianity's tremendous success and appeal down the centuries has been the fact that so many of its stories and legends touch on universal aspects of human experience. How does one cope with persecution? How does one cope in times of war? Christianity is about death, and it's about love, a mother's love for her child. So much in it is part of us.
And I think the reason why early Christian art really is an art for eternity, for all times and places, is that it expresses those universal emotions with total clarity. Its images are all the more powerful because they don't slavishly imitate actual space and true scale. And if you think forward into modern times, to me, it's clear that in the long run it was their approach to art, not perspective, that ultimately won out. Think of the most famous painting of the 20th century by the most famous of all modern artists, Picasso's Guernica, that great scream of outrage against the horrors of war. It might not be a religious work of art, but it uses a language of emotion, of compression, of scale and space distortion that's got nothing to do with perspective. A language that seems to me very close to that of the old Christian artists. With its piled bodies and screaming faces, I see it as a secular version of Giotto's Massacre of the Innocents.
In one crucial sense, I don't think perspective made any difference at all, because while it gave artists a new way of creating convincing illusions, it didn't change the fundamental challenge, which isn't to do with how you represent what's in front of your eyes, but to do with how you express what's inside yourself, what's in your heart, what's in your soul.
The Ethics of Ethno-Tourism tomorrow on BBC4. Filmmaker Mark Anstis takes up a travel company's offer to venture into the jungle in search of a tribe who've allegedly never had contact with the outside world. First contact is at 9.